Welcome back to the Inside D3 Show Season 2. Brand new episodes, brand new topics, brand new guests, and a whole lot more to discuss for you guys. I don't know about y'all, but I'm super excited to get this new content out. So be on the lookout for new episodes on all of our platforms. You can follow us on our website at InsideD3.com. D3 Inside is still the Twitter and the Instagram, and for our Facebook and all of our streaming platforms, just search the Inside D3 Show. So yeah, I'm done talking. Enjoy the season, enjoy the show, and thank you guys for watching. Thanks to the guests and everyone else that's been supporting since day one.
So today I have RJ Soderman joining us. He is the assistant track and field coach and cross country coach, and also an academic advisor at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater of the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. So RJ, thanks for stopping by, and how are you doing today?
I'm good. I appreciate you having me on today, and looking forward to talking all things D3.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for, That's what we're here. So, for this season, we're going a little topics-based in terms of, some of the things that we're covering. So for the topic today, we're talking a lot about transitions. So first, I want to just have you give us a little bit of background on you and, some of the journeys that you've taken through Division III athletics so far.
Sure. Yeah. So I started off here at UW-Whitewater as a track and field athlete. I wasn't recruited. I just kind of stumbled upon it. I did track in high school like most athletes do. And there was an opportunity to try out. And so my roommate and I, we were like, hey, let's try out and give it a go. And we ended up making the team. And, initially I started off doing the short sprints. I was going to stick to like the 50. It was the 55 at the time. And then it got actually changed to the 60 a couple of years ago. But then I really kind of found a niche for myself in the javelin throw. So I picked that up. It was weird to me because, here in the Midwest and a majority of, the Midwest and even some of the Western states, Montana, things like that, there's not any high school javelin. So I was just kind of picking up out of nowhere and just kind of going off of what I knew and trying to figure out from there, and became relatively successful. Had some success at the conference level, which was good. So yeah, after I got done with that, graduated in 2010, and at the same time that I was graduating, I also started my master's program. So I had about 6 credits of undergrad to finish, and then I started taking graduate courses because they were offered at the undergraduate price. So I figured, hey, if I can take graduate classes at a cheaper price, why not do it? And then that kind of spurred my interest into, finishing my graduate degree. And at the same time, I was also helping the javelin throwers out on campus because we had never had a javelin coach. And there was a group of athletes that were here that, still wanted some help. So when I was able to, I would come around and help them during the outdoor season, a little bit during the indoor season. Never really thought too much about it, in all honesty. It was just kind of something I did as like a side job, got paid a very little bit of money just to come and help out. And at the time I was working multiple different jobs because I was kind of, in all honesty, I was floundering a little bit. I didn't quite know what to do. My degree was in a field that I wanted to go into, which was the medical field, but I just didn't understand how it was going to get me into the position that I wanted it to be. So then I thought, all right, I think having a master's degree will help push me in one direction or another. So then I finished that. And as I kind of moved forward with that, then I got the wild idea to, well, this isn't working out exactly the way I would thought it was going to. So I decided to join the military. So then I was in the military for 4 years. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't see it as a career as I think some people do when they join. It's just something I'd kind of always wanted to do. And so I went in there, served my time proudly, and I really enjoyed it. But when I was done with that, then I kind of came back to square one a little bit. And I was like, okay, now what do I do? And I ended up picking up work at a local hospital. So I was working in their cardiac unit and also in their emergency department for about 6 years. So I would do that in the afternoons. I had like the second and the third shift. And then during the day, I would be on campus helping out with coaching stuff. So I was kind of, balancing both of them. And then while I was doing that at the same time, I was like, well, I think I can take this farther. So then I went and got my EMT license, and then I started getting into that. And there were times where I'd be working like a 24-hour shift, or I'd be working overnights, and then I would just come back in and just kind of roll into practice. And then ever since then, I kind of just stuck with it. There were some changes on campus in terms of people and, where they were in their jobs, and people leaving at least the athletic department for higher end jobs at a lot of Division I institutions. And so then that opened the door for me to be able to step in as a full-time member here on campus. And I didn't know anything about academic advising. I remember meeting with my advisor, but other than that, I didn't really know too much about it. I kind of thought, all right, well, I help the students and student athletes pick their courses. So I kind of got into that, realized how much more there is to the advising piece of it. And then the way my contract is set up is I spend half of the day doing advising with students and student athletes. And then my other half is spent doing cross country in the fall, and then working with not only the javelin throwers, but also the long jumpers and triple jumpers during the fall and spring as well. And so I've been doing that full time for about 4 years now, and I've really enjoyed a lot of it. That's a very long and sort of drawn out explanation as to how I got there, but I think it highlights that there's never, at least for athletes, and then as students continue to graduate out of the program, I think it's important for them to understand, from my perspective, that there's never going to be a clear-cut way to do things. There are multiple ways to get to where you want to go, and I'm just an example of one of many different ways to get to those places.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made a great point about just the fact that you've had so many different experiences and opportunities, and you were able to still kind of pinpoint where you wanted to be after that. And I think that's one of those things that just comes with having those experiences. You'll never really know what you want to do until you actually try it. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. And and especially on campuses, they stress a lot about internships and experiencing different things. Unfortunately, a lot of times, especially now, you're not going to get paid for it, but sometimes you have to embrace the terribleness that's out there. And and when you get through it and you come out on the other side, what you've learned is invaluable. You can't really put a monetary value on those things. And that was one of the things that led to me being able to get into the hospital system and into the medical field. Was I had an unpaid internship, and the things that I was using at the unpaid internship were the exact same things that were being used at this hospital system. And that was my way in. Was they looked at me and said, okay, we don't have to train him on all of these things because he's already used this. So he should be able just to step in, maybe have a week or two of shadowing, and then we can let him go from there. And I think that was one of the things that really paid off for me in terms of being able to find work right away after I graduated.
Yeah. So let's go right into, the transitions that we were talking about. So I want to kind of pick your brain about what that transition was like for you, especially going from, undergrad to grad school. Was that like, did you go straight in after you graduated?
Yeah, I did. So when I was finishing my undergrad, I took a couple of graduate, level courses, and I didn't really know what was involved with them. I didn't really know what I wanted to focus on, but I think what was nice is the program that I was in here at Whitewater with the master's program, it was just kind of starting to develop. So it hadn't been around real long. And one of the nice things is I was able to work with actually my advisor at that time, who was the chair of the department. He allowed me to kind of build my own master's program while satisfying all the things that I would need to. So I ended up being able to do a pharmacological study with track and field athletes that was, published, and I made it to the American College of Sports Medicine. It took a little bit of ground because at the time, the research that I did there really wasn't anything like it out there. And I was able to explain that to the person that was running the program. And I said, I think if we can get this going, this may end up useful down the road. And at the time, I think the supplement industry was just kind of getting into its heyday, and there was a lot of unknowns out there. And I think there still is. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to focus on, was how can I use the work that I'm doing, and, particularly in athletics, athletes are always trying to figure out what can I do to make myself better. And, within the confines and the restraints that we're in, can I be someone that they can go to ask questions? And then I have my own research to potentially either confirm or deny what they may or may not be hearing. But yeah, going into that program, I really didn't know what to expect. I think I was the youngest person in the program. I started it at 21, and there was people in their 30s and 40s that were in this program, and I had zero work experience at the time. So I really just kind of rolled from one program into another, but I think the transition was easier than I thought because I was able to start it while I was still finishing my athletics and also finishing my undergrad at the same time. So there wasn't a lapse for me to be able to, okay, I have to get back into school mode with taking notes and, doing tests and things like that. So I think that part was really helpful for me starting right away as opposed to waiting and then coming back later.
Definitely. I think it's kind of weird because like I'm in a different situation over here. Like, I took a gap year for my after my undergrad, and I'm starting my graduate school right now. And I don't know, it's really, I think it just depends on who you are and what kind of experience you want. Because I kind of feel like that year I took was pivotal too. But I'm sure it could have went either way. If I was to go straight in afterwards, it's really just, I think it just depends.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely think it does. Especially I see, especially in the advising office, I see a lot of adult learners or non-traditional students, and I've had students that left college back in the 60s and 70s, lived an entire life, now potentially have grandkids, and now they want to restart their college education and kind of finish what they started. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I think a lot of it depends on where you are and in what you've learned, and just being able to come back to what some form of a structure, and I think a lot of that speaks to what athletes go through is you have structure for such a long time, and then that structure goes away, and sometimes the only way you can get that back is by going back into school and getting yourself that structure piece back. And I think that's why quite often they do so well doing master's degrees and PhDs and doctoral level things. Is a lot of it has to do with that structure that they may no longer have because their eligibility is up.
Yeah. So what do you kind of tell your student athletes that you advise, if they're thinking about taking that next step? What are kind of the parameters that you set for them?
Yeah, a lot of the discussions that I have with them is whatever field you're looking in or whatever you're interested in with your undergraduate, do you need that higher level degree? Do you need it right now at this moment? Like, is that the one thing that's keeping you from getting into that career field? And if it is, then great. Then let's start exploring different options. What are your schools? Are you willing to travel? Because what if the school that you want that offers that program is on the East Coast or on the West Coast? Are you going to be willing to potentially leave the state and then, go to that particular school? If it's something that doesn't, and you can get into the career field, and then there's an option for you to have the company or whoever you're working for, if they'll pay for you to go back, that's another really good way to do it too. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked by students if they think that they have to, well, if I'm going to get a higher level degree, I have to go do it right away, or I'm not going to remember what's going on. But that may not necessarily be the case. And you actually may find that getting that higher level degree could be easier after you've gotten some experience in that career field, because then you can go back and apply those learning experiences to that program that you're in, and you'll find it exponentially easier as opposed to what you were going through in your undergrad.
Yeah, definitely. I wish you were my advisor when I was back in undergrad. I might have learned a thing or two. But let's talk a little bit about, your transition out of grad school and, what that was like. Was it a real difficult situation? A lot of people struggle coming out, but what was your experience like?
Yeah, it was definitely odd for me. And I think, as I go back and think about what I did after I left graduate school, and that structure was gone there, and then I still had practice structure because I was coaching at the time. But I always wanted to learn and know more. And with what I was doing at the hospital, I was trying to figure out, what's the best way that I can continue to learn stuff. So then I found myself back in school again at a technical college, getting my EMT license, and then going to the next step, which is your advanced EMT license, because I was just like, I understand this stuff and I want to know more. And if it means it's going to benefit me in my career field, then, why not keep going with it? But there was definitely a void, and there was a year or two where I was kind of just all over the place. I didn't really know, what was going on, and, what was my ultimate purpose, and, is this a career or is this a job? And, how am I going to be successful in this? And if I want to move up, do I need to pivot and look at a different career path within the medical field, or do I have to stay in this one particular area? So a lot of what I did was, and I'm grateful for all the people I worked with at the hospital, the doctors that I worked with, a lot of cardiologists and like emergency medical doctors. I talked to them, and a lot of them has very fascinating stories too about how they got to where, they were. I was kind of always the mindset, well, if you want to be a doctor, you just, you become a doctor, you're in school for like 16 years and then you're in debt for the rest of your life. That was kind of always my assumption. But a lot of them came from different backgrounds, like finance backgrounds, and, some were like stockbrokers and, just very interesting things that they were in, but, they had that calling into that career field. So, I think having, and when I talk to athletes and students that I advise, is it's not so much your why, but, what's the purpose? What's going to make you say, I could see myself doing this? Or is it something that if you get into it, then that's the end of it, and then you have to continue learning from there? Or do you only learn on the job, or do you have the ability to go and learn more at seminars and, in different schooling? And if you want to go back to school, can you do that? So those are questions that I try to pose to the students and the athletes, to just say, hey, there's more to it than just school done, get married, family, grandkids. There's all that stuff that's in between there, and let's talk about that, because I don't think it gets talked about enough. It's more of the day-to-day, let me get through this class, let me just get through this one exam, but how does that fit into the bigger picture? Why is that one class important, even if you don't like it, or if it's unrelated to your major, which I get a lot, like, well, I have to take this one class, it doesn't, this is not for my major. And I said, I get it. I had to do it too. I'm completely with you. But do you understand how that fits into the long-term goal of what you're trying to get done? I think that's the biggest piece that sometimes students forget about when they're, doing things they may not necessarily want to do.
So let's talk a little bit about, your current season, or, your current preparation for the season, I should say, for right now. What kind of adjustments and hardships have you had to kind of go through during this past at least couple months since, everything's starting back up?
Yeah. It's definitely, it's been, something unlike I've ever experienced. Really, the only thing that I can attribute it to being a little bit older is that I remember exactly where I was and what was going on when 9/11 happened. That was sort of a timestamp in my mind for an eternity. And then, I was like, I don't really know if I'll ever add another one of those. But then this came along, and I don't think I'll ever forget what happened when we were at the indoor national meet. We had gone there, we practiced, we came back to the hotel, and 2 hours later, I was rooming with our sports medicine director, and we had the TV on. We were getting ready to go to dinner, and all of a sudden, everything just started to go. And once it started, it just exploded.
Mm-hmm.
First, it was, the NCAA March Madness, and then it trickled down to the Division II. And then the next thing we know, we're getting phone calls. The head coaches are getting phone calls saying, we're done, everything's canceled, find a way back home. And, for all of that to transpire in less than 12 hours was just, it was unreal, and I can't really explain how I felt, because I personally, I've never made it to the national meet. I've coached a lot of national champions and All-Americans, but, I've never been that athlete that's been there and done all of the time, all of the work, just to get to that one point. And we had a handful of first timers that were there, and trying to explain to them that this is it. Like, you did all the work, you made it, but you don't get to showcase that, and you're done. Those are very difficult conversations to have. And then, moving forward from there, it was, how do we form some sort of a resemblance of kind of where we were? Because I don't think it's ever going to go back to as we were previously, but the goal was for me was to, how do I keep the athletes engaged? How do I not let them, just kind of flounder off and not be available? So I called every single one of them, especially during like March, April, and May. I tried to call all my athletes at least once or twice a month just to say, hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Is there anything I can help you with? Do you just need to talk to someone that's not your parents because they were stuck in their house too, or, whoever you're living with? Um, so yeah, I just made it a big point to try to check in on them. And then as we got closer here over the summer, I had to start figuring out, how is this going to work in terms of practices where we're used to having maybe 10, 15, athletes in a group at a time. And now I don't know what it's going to look like. What if I can only have 2 or 3 at a time? And then I have to have multiple practices a day. How is that going to work? Um, how's it going to work if we're indoors and we have to wear a mask all the time, even while we're working out? Do I need to adjust some of the workouts so I'm not putting such a hard stress on them? Because now not only is it a physical stress, now they also have a mental stress of, it's just me, the coach, and one other athlete, and then I'm potentially hosting 4 or 5 practices a day. And it's like, how does that work? How do I keep the unity of the group together? Are they still talking to each other? All of those things. So there was a lot of things that we really had to work on and talk about. I did things like this. I had meetings with them, online, just to see how everybody was doing, see what was going on. And I will say I was pleasantly surprised that a lot of it was very positive stuff. They were making do with what they had. They were going and finding tracks to work out on, or going in their lawns and doing whatever they could and running up the roads and the sidewalks and the streets. And they were out there getting after it when I think most people thought they would kind of just give in. So that was one of the things that I really like to see. And I think obviously the social media piece really kind of took off too. I was relatively new to the time to Instagram, but I started to figure that whole thing out while we were in quarantine too. And so it was like, this is another really good way for me to stay in contact with the athletes and let them know that they're not doing this alone. I think that was the most important thing for me, is you're not alone. You may be physically alone, but you're not alone in this struggle with getting the workouts done, making sure your schoolwork is done, all of those things. I'm still here for you for all of those things. I'm just not there in person. So if you need to put me on speakerphone and you need to have me count out your seconds, or whatever you're doing in your workouts, I am more than willing to do those things. So I think those were really some of the key things that I tried to focus on to keep them from just kind of going to a bad place, is really what I was focused on.
Yeah. I think it's been a lot of adjustments for everybody, coaches, staff, student athletes, everyone. We all are dealing with it in our own kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, from university to university, from college to college, everybody's got a different way of doing it. So I think it's definitely, it's one of those things where it's not a one size fit all for everybody's, way of handling things this year. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a definite adjustment for everybody, but I think that we'll all figure it out and try to make the most out of it. So that's all you can really hope for right now.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest part is, especially in track and field, you're used to, you ran this fast, you jumped this far, you threw it this far. Those are definites. You have definites. There is no variables there. It is what it is, because that's what the clock read, or that's what the tape measure said. And all of these unknowns about, can we start practice? What does practice look like? Are they going to cut our sports? I see, the athletes are like, well, I see it happening at other institutions. And, our administration here has been very open and, honest with what's going on. And I always tell my athletes, if I know anything, I will tell you immediately what's going on, because I don't ever want you to find out from somebody else that something's going on. You need to hear it from me first. So, and yeah, it's hard, because I meet with them and they have questions, but there's often times where I don't have answers. And I think that's hard. It's not only hard for me, but it's difficult for them as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So look, last question for you, RJ.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to kind of give us some advice. If you were to give advice to some recent graduates right now, going through trying to transition into their careers right now, obviously there's a huge job shortage all across the country. What are some of the things that you would advise them to do or kind of coach them on in terms of, making this transition right now?
Yeah, and I think you make a good point that there's more jobs out there than I think people are led on to believe that there are. And I think that's one of the things that really gives, me as someone that sees the athletes graduate and move on, that gives me a lot of hope that you're able to go out there and yes, you can find a job. Now, you are going to have to be a little resilient because there are going to be times where you're going to send in your resume, you're going to do everything right, you're going to meet all the qualifications, and you're not going to get the job. Um, it took me about 274 applications before I got it right. So that's not something that's out of the norm. And I think having that resiliency and the ability to bounce back from setbacks is really the most important thing. If there's truly a career field that you want to get into, all you have to do is keep pushing. Sometimes you got to start at the bottom and work your way up. You're not always going to be just springboarding right into this awesome career field, 6 figures out of the gate, things like that. There's going to be hard times, but the things that you've learned, not only from being in school, but also from athletics, those are things that will help carry you through those hard times and allow you to be more successful down the road. Because ultimately, to be successful in your career field, whether you move from one to another, you just have to be able to adapt yourself to the whatever situation you're in, adapt and overcome to everything that's put in front of you. There's always, for most athletes, there's always something that's someone can jump farther, throw farther, run faster, dunk a basketball, throw the football farther, whatever the case is, they can do all these things better than you, but that doesn't mean that you stop working at it. You continue to work and you continue to push yourself so that you can become better. And that all that applies in the career field. And I think there's a lot of things that are out there that athletes sometimes overlook. And it may mean, yeah, you have that 4-year degree, but you may have to go back to a technical college for like a class or a semester or two to put you in an even better position. There's always other things that are out there for, students and athletes to be successful with. And sometimes you have to ask questions, and you got to ask the hard questions, but also don't be afraid to ask for help. I've written tons of letters of recommendations, called employers, all of those things. So reach out to your coaches, your advisors, your athletic administration. They're more than willing to help you out and get into your career field. If all you need is a letter of rec or, you need something like that, that's what we're here for, because ultimately the student athlete and the students, their success is directly correlated to our success. And if I can have one student that graduates, gets into the perfect job, becomes super successful, and, somewhere 20, 30 years down the road comes back and says, hey, because of that letter of recommendation or because of, what I learned from you, during my years at Whitewater, I was able to be successful. I have a family, everything's going great. And that to me is a win. And I just need one out of the hundreds that I'll see over the year. If I can just get one, then I feel like I've accomplished something in the job that I'm in.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, thank you so much for your insight. I really appreciate you coming on here and talking with us, RJ. And, we wish you the best of success and safety through this next season and this next year. And, appreciate you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Glad I'm willing to talk anytime about this stuff. There's a lot of important information that's out there. And I think the more that we talk about it, the more accessible it becomes and more people are able to get, the knowledge that they need. And I wish you all the best in what you're doing in your program, and stay safe, be well, and hopefully we can get back to getting on the track and back on the fields and doing all the things that we love in athletics.
Yes, sir. That's the plan. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed for it. So thank
Absolutely.
you again for coming on.
Yeah, take care.
All right, you too.